indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Oliver, could you please take roll call?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Issing?
Here.
Mr. Kachasik?
Here.
Dr. Koscho?
Here.
Mr. Leonard?
Here.
Mr. Newell?
Here.
Mr. Nemec?
Here.
Mr. Petrucci? Mr. Stovar?
Here.
Dr. Trey?
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 10th, 2015 meeting?
Motion.
Second by Mr. Leonard.
Question being called for. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried. Dr. Harris, information.
Sure. We have the student union representative, Trent Soames. Up already.
Last week, the student union held elections for freshman positions, and I would like to introduce them. They're not here, but I'll introduce them by word of mouth. The president is Aaron Deutsch, vice president Luke Babick, secretary is Reagan Panzo, treasurer is Brendan Little, and the representatives would be Jeffrey Backus, Jonathan Hagall, Bobby Kaczynski, and Angel Moranti. Homecoming court elections will be held the week of September 21st. That's all I have.
What is the homecoming date?
October 10th. Yes.
Any other questions for the student union rep?
Can you move the date? Maybe it's the first time in like 25 years we're going to have to miss homecoming.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Open
sorry.
Open house after the school board meeting last week went really well. By the way, I got to stay and see the parents and the teachers and stuff. It seemed like it was fun. So. That's it.
I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all I have, Mr. Nemec.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Now it's time for recognition of visitors. We have one resident that has signed up to speak. The following rules are in effect. You must state your name, address, and group affiliation, if any. Your statement will be limited to 5 minutes in duration. All statements shall be directed to the president, and no participant may address or question a board member individually. I may interrupt your statement if your statement is too lengthy, personally indirect, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. One resident, Mr. Brian D. Christ.
My name is Brian Chris, and I live at 200 Fairview Drive, and postal zip is 15642. It's Irwin, but I'm actually a Manhattan resident and a taxpayer of this school district. The reason why I'm here to speak tonight and ask for some concern into the employee that is currently holding the director of buildings and grounds position. The reason I have this concern through.
Excuse me, sir. This sounds as though it may be a matter of personnel, which could very well be a private matter. Have you addressed this issue with the superintendent, administration, or anyone in administration?
No, up to this date, no.
Okay. If you have concerns about a school employee, I think the proper protocol would be for you to deal with administration so that they can address whatever concerns you may have, address your concerns with members of the board in an appropriate manner, because depending on the nature of what you're asking, it could be something that should be discussed in all fairness to other individuals under a personnel matter in executive session, not in a public meeting.
Okay.
So my recommendation would be that if you have concerns, is that you address them with Dr. Harris and then go through that process.
And that's the reason why I'm here tonight, to try to get a little more information.
Okay.
I will make an appointment at your convenience. And
If you just call tomorrow, it should be fine.
okay.
I can make myself available.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chris. May I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report and the high school extracurricular fund report?
Motion?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Issing,
Second by Mr. Petrusi.
Question.
Question being called for. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried. May I have a motion to approve the list of bills for the month of September?
So moved.
Motion by
Second.
Dallas, second by Dr. Costo.
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried. Tonight, we held an executive session prior to the meeting to discuss personnel, some legal matters, and real estate issues. New business, athletics, and extracurricular. Dr. Koshko.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do have a few things. Move to accept the following resignation. Julianne Bost, Assistant Track Coach, Trafford Middle School.
Second.
Second by Mr. Petrusi.
Question?
Question being called for. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Move to employ the following personnel. New employment is contingent upon the receipt of all necessary certifications, documentations, and acceptance of Act 34, 151, and 114 waivers from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. John Delancey, interim 7th and 8th grade boys head soccer coach. Kathy Kelly Garris, NHS sponsor at Penn Trafford High School. Jamie Riston, band director at Trafford Middle School. Rick Steele, news crew and video production sponsor at Penn Middle. And Tina Stewart, drama guild assistant sponsor at Fall.
Second.
Question?
Second by Mr. Newell.
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Finally, move to approve the list of volunteer coaches as presented to the board. All coaching volunteers must have Act 34, 151, and 114 waivers on file with the athletic director. Copy list will become part of the official minutes and of this meeting. Appendix B for those who are.
Second.
Second by Mr.
Question?
Leonard.
Question.
Question being called for. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried. Budget and Finance, Mr. Kachasik, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to approve the proposed activities and budgets for the 2015-16 school year for the high school and middle school student organizations in accordance with the recommendations of the Auditor General's Office. Budgets and activities were reviewed and recommended by the business manager and filed in the district's business office.
Second.
Second by Mr. Petrusi.
Question.
Question.
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Move to authorize the administration to advertise jointly with the Intermediate Unit Number 7 Joint Purchasing Boards to seek bids on the following for the 2016-17 school year, and that the board officers and administration be authorized to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
Question?
Second by Mr. Leonard.
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Move to approve the expenditures for the high school renovation project for the month of August 2015, according to the schedule as listed below.
Second.
Question.
Second by Mr. Newell.
Question being
Question?
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Move to approve the following change orders as listed below that were reviewed last week by the architect.
Second.
Second by Mr. Petrusi.
Question.
Question?
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Move to approve the WIU academic, Academy Program membership fee of $16,000 for the 2015 school year.
Second.
Second by Mr. Newell.
Question?
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
That was all I have this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Kachasik. Buildings and Grounds and Safety, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a couple items. First, I'd like to move to accept the following retirement resignation. Alfred Scheller, custodian at Trafford Schools, effective August 13th, 2015.
Second?
Question.
Second by Dr. Costo.
Question being called for. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Next, I'd like to move to employ the following personnel. New employment is contingent upon the receipt of all necessary certification documentation and the acceptance of Act 34, 151, and 114 waivers from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Mr. Bob Zeeland, custodian at Penn Trafford High School, effective 9/15/15 at $15.20 an hour.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kachasik.
Question.
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
And that is all I have for time, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Employee Relations, Negotiations, and Transportations, Mrs. Ising.
Nothing to report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mrs. Ising. Food Service, Dr. Trey.
No report this month, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Trey. Personnel and Curriculum, Mr. Petrucci,
Thank
please.
you, Mr. President. Move to approve the list of additional substitute teachers and support personnel for the month of September 2015.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kachasik.
Question.
Question being called for. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Move to authorize administration to continue using parent volunteers from the 2014-15 school year approved list unless there is a discontinuation of service. Volunteers will be used only with the teachers and or principal's approval. All volunteers must have Act 34, 151, and 114 clearances on file.
Second.
Second by Mr. Newell.
Question.
I do have a question, just a simple question that, part of the motion says approved list unless there's a discontinuation of service. Now, just exactly what bearing does that have on it? I'm sure I should know that, but I don't.
They have to work, if they don't work, they have to work every year.
So this
If
is the
they-
same continuation
Yes.
services, or teachers, or board members, whoever, their clearance
Mhm.
retention.
But they would still have to be up to date.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mike's going to respond to that.
Okay, I think the response that was given is probably appropriate.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
Nice job, Ms. Hall.
we should bring her more often to these meetings. Good job.
Okay, we have a question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
All right. Move to approve to accept the following resignations: Melissa Cheplick, Joey Niehaus, and Rosemary Schuster.
Second.
Second by Dr. Costo.
Question.
Question being called for. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Move to employ the following personnel. New employees contingent upon receipt of all necessary certification, documentation, and acceptance of Act 34, 151, and 114 waivers from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Special Education Instructional Aides, Sarah Carlson, Michelle Close, Holly Macon. Paraprofessionals, Melissa Hockenberg, Victoria Howell, Leslie House, Libraries. Lunchroom aide, Candace Nabry.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Ising.
Question.
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
I just want to take a brief moment. Michelle's sitting in the audience
Motion
tonight. Motion carried. Just raise your hand. When did you just finish, when did you finish your degree?
I finished in 2011.
2011?
Yes,
Are you PT grad, or?
I am.
You are, which year were you?
2007.
2007. Well, I was glad to have you home. How does it feel to work where you graduated?
It's an interesting experience. I like it.
Well, you're doing great so far, and we really appreciate you being here, and I thank you so much for coming out tonight
Thank you.
for us. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, we passed. I'm sorry. I jumped in.
Move to approve the following leave requests: Julian Bost, Breanne Haywood, Brett Lego, Carrie Thomas, Melissa Weiss.
Second.
Second by Dr. Costo.
Question.
Question being called for. This will be a roll call vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried.
Fine, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Petrucci. Policy, Public Relations, Legislative, Title II, Mr. Newell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one item. Move to accept and file the minutes of the Superintendent's Information Committee meeting held on Monday, August 3rd, 2015.
Second.
Second by Mr. Leonard.
Question.
Question being called for. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Newell. Taxes, insurance, and census, Mr. Stovall.
Nothing this evening.
Thank you,
Mr. President.
thank you, Mr. Stovall. Solicitors report, Mr. Brungo.
Nothing to report this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Brungo. PTEA Representative, Mr. Reinier.
I don't want to ruin this record for you. Nothing for me.
Thank you, Mr. Reinier. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Chapman.
Meet with that parent.
Meeting adjourned
That's Tammy.
at 7:00.